Let's go. Yeah. Okay, I came here to win. I'm coming for the title, yeah, this is the time. Your friends become your rivals, yeah, I've been on my grind. All I know is been survival, now it's my time to shine. I made it to the finals, I've been going hard, I ain't worried.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Real with Ray podcast. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications every time we release one. Please share it with a friend, sister, brother, cousin, and let's get started with this next episode. Let's go! All right, this is episode 3 with Real with Ray. I've got a special guest on today, Mr. Marvin Krontz. Cue the applause. Marvin Krontz, Mr. Marv. We call him Mr. Marv around here. Mr. Marv, tell me about yourself. Where are you from?
Sturgis.
You're from Sturgis?
Yes.
But now you live in Battle Creek.
Born in Sturgis.
Okay.
Yes. Live in Battle Creek.
Okay.
Benton Harbor before Sturgis.
How long have you been in Battle Creek?
152 years.
52.
Came to Battle Creek in 1942.
1942.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me, when were you born? What was your birthday?
12th of February, 33.
1933.
Yep.
So how old does that make you?
91, 92, 96.
Well, yesterday you told me you're 91 years old
I'm
and 8
91.
months.
I'm 91.
Right?
Yep.
But you counted, you said 8 months. So
91, 8 months.
91 and 8 months.
Do you want to get to the days?
Tell me what you were telling me a little bit yesterday. What's it like to be 91 years old?
I don't know. I've never been 91 this old before.
Yeah.
So, but I can tell you what it's like to be 80 years old.
Yeah.
Or 85 years old. And it's nothing like being 91 years old.
No.
No. You start slowing down.
Yeah.
And you get slower and slower each day.
Yeah. So, and you've been married how long?
68 years.
68 years.
Yep.
That's quite an accomplishment.
Getting almost 69.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know that I know that many people that have been married that long.
Well, one day at a time.
One day at a time.
One day at a time. Yep.
What's the secret to a happy long marriage?
To start out on the right foot and to decide the way a marriage should be and carry it through the rest of your life.
When's your anniversary? What date were you married on?
June the 10th, 1956.
1956.
2:20 in the afternoon.
2:20 in the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
So that you were 23 years old, if I do my math right.
Yep.
Awesome.
And my wife was 17.
17.
Yep.
And now it's been 68 years.
Yep.
And how many kids?
3.
3 kids.
2 boys and a girl.
And how many grandkids?
5.
And how many great grandkids?
11.
11.
Yep.
Any great grandkids?
No.
Not yet.
No.
What is the oldest great grandkid?
18.
18.
Yeah.
Man.
Don't ask me anymore. Because I can't name the rest.
Do you want to be a great grandpa? Would that be pretty cool, you think, or no?
If that's what the Lord wants me to be.
Yeah.
No.
I'd say it's got to be pretty interesting to see that many generations from you and your wife, to see that many generations down from your kids and then grandkids.
It's sort of a house full when you get them all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where they're all going to stay and what they're going to do, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 91 years on Earth, on planet Earth, a lot has changed.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about today? What are times are like today? What in comparison to the rest of the time that you've lived?
I still think we live in a great world. I think we've made it a rotten world, but we live in a great world. I think things are as good now as they've ever been, if we make it as good as we've ever been. And I think it can be as bad as they've ever been if you make it as bad as they've ever been. I don't like to look at the negative things. I like positive things.
Yeah. What are some of the positives about today in comparison to the past?
Well, I think we have more today than we've ever had. I think that we'll see the time that we'll have more than we've ever had, but I think it'll see a time maybe that we won't be able to afford some of the things that we have now, you know. So the positive is I think it's good that everybody who wants to live a good life can live a good life. And I don't think we have to have everything in the world to live a good life. I think we have a good life just the way we make a good life, you know. Sandra and I's had a terrible good life together because we made it a good life together.
Yeah.
So,
What would, if in your opinion, what are 2 or 3 things that make a good life? What are the key components to a good life?
to have a good wife, to have good kids, to have good grandkids, live the way God wants us to live, do the things that we think is right. Makes a good life.
That's good. And now tell me about this. If a question for you, if you could go back to any time that you've lived from 1933 to 2024, if you could just go back for a day, they invented a time machine. What point in time would you go back to?
Today.
Today?
Yeah.
To this morning when you got up, or
yes.
now?
Yes. Things behind you is behind you.
Yeah.
Look forward to things ahead of you.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
You might go back this morning and say no to me asking to be on the podcast, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, when I asked you about it, you said you had been on a show before.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. What show were you on, and when was that?
That was Yakov Smirnoff's show in Branson, Missouri. Can't tell you when, but I'll let you see it, and then you'll tell me when, because I think the date's on it.
Okay.
I don't remember. It's 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And he had a contest. He had people tell jokes before the show came on. He was filming them, but it was before the show came on. And he had a contest to tell them the funniest jokes. And 3 people told jokes, and I said, I could top that. So I told a joke. And I won the contest with the joke I told. So that put me up on stage with him. And then he had a script for me, and I wouldn't follow the script. I told him I can't do that. So anyhow, we just sort of run free, and we had a good time at it. And the show turned out to be pretty fun.
That's awesome.
So
Well, it sounds like it was a fun experience being on the show.
it was. It was.
So what if you enjoy now? Is there an era in time that you really enjoyed that you thought was a great period of time? Maybe when your kids were little, or when they were before kids, when you didn't have a huge family, or when a different point in your life that you enjoyed?
No. Times has always been greater for me after marriage.
Yeah.
After we've been married. It's been the greatest time in my life.
Yeah.
Times in the service was good times for me. There was growing times. It was a good time to grow up and do things we had to do in life and depend on ourselves, you know. And so that was good times, actually. People think they have bad times, but sometimes bad times can be good times too. So.
What branch of service were you?
Army.
And what years did you serve? Do you remember?
Yes. March the 26th of 1953 to about last of February of 55.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember you told me before that you visited some other places during that time. You were in Korea at some point.
Korea. 17 months, 1 day. Was in Japan for R&R for 20 days. And, of course, since Sandra and I have been married, we've did a lot of traveling, different, whole bunch of Caribbean islands, you know, and so, on cruises. So,
What's your favorite place you've been so far?
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Yep.
Which island of Hawaii?
Oahu.
Oahu.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What made you like that the most?
I don't know. It was just it was a fun time and a free time. Sandra and I together. I think so, yeah.
And even till today, you still go to lunch every day with your wife, right?
Yes.
Where do you guys eat?
Taco Bell,
Taco Bell. And they know what you want when you come in, right?
$7.07.
Yeah. And what do you get at Taco Bell?
Sandra has a taco, chips and cheese, and cinnamon twist, and I have a bean rice burrito. So,
Yeah.
And then we share the chips and cheese, but I don't care for the cinnamon twist.
Yeah. You think Taco Bell is, what do you think about nutrition and longevity? Has there been a thing that you do that you feel like makes you be able to keep working at the pace that you do and being 91 years old? Is there a nutritional secret that you have?
Nope.
No?
I eat rotten food. I eat fast foods. Everybody tells me how unhealthy I am to eat fast foods and all that. I'm 91 years old and I don't have too many days of sickness. And when I have physical examinations, they tell me what good health I'm in. And I even asked the doctor the last examination I had. He told me how good a health I was in and everything's working great. And then he says I have to drink more water. And I asked him, I have a question. And he said, what's that? And I said, how did I get to be 91 years old drinking the amount of water I do? And he says, I can't answer that question. So I guess it's just the way we're made up.
Yeah.
So,
Now, tell me, because I've asked you, if you want a bottle of water here and there, and what do you tell me about water?
rust your stomach.
It'll rust your stomach.
Sure.
So what do you drink?
Usually Diet Cola. 90% of the time Diet Cola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you never drink water?
Oh, don't know. Probably when I was younger, but no. Overseas, probably I drank water because it didn't have a whole bunch of other stuff, So.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I don't drink water now.
Can you remember the last time you had a cup of water?
A cup of water?
Yeah, where you just drink water, a bottle of water.
No, I can't tell you that. A bottle of water has been a long time ago. A few swallows of water maybe, but not drink water like people drink water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And you believe that it's not good for you? For the most
I
part?
think it's good for you. I
Yeah.
just don't particularly care for it.
That's funny. And you're still active. You still work, still do drywall, electrical, plumbing.
Yeah.
So this is your last tile job, though. You're done doing tiling.
Yep.
What is it? What do you enjoy the most? What's your favorite trade or thing that you do that you work on?
Probably the mechanical parts. of
Mechanical
what
parts.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. I like rough building. I like to frame and things like that. But I think probably the mechanical part of it I like best of all.
Yeah. What do you think about if someone's watching and they're a young person? What are your thoughts on college compared to trades, or do you think what's your advice as far as that's concerned?
I don't believe that everybody is college material. I don't believe that everybody has the ability to go to college. I believe that there's good people who has never been to college. I believe there are good people who has never even finished high school. And I believe that there are smart people who has never finished high school or college. But I also believe that kids ought to get an education. And I believe that they ought to really be serious about it.
And you were telling me that you didn't finish high school,
Oh,
but then you went back later on in life.
66 years old.
66 years old, and you went back. What school did you go to?
Calhoun, our family altar Christian school.
Were you sitting in classrooms with kids, or did you do it online, or how did you go about that?
No, did it basically night school.
Night school.
Yeah, yeah. And I did it basically at home.
Yeah.
But I had, I can't tell you the name of the teachers, but pastor was our pastor for the Christian part of the classes, and had a science teacher. I think, yeah, science teacher that really was fascinated because she was going to have me dissect a frog. And my daughter laughed at that, and she said, "What's so funny about it?" And she said, "My dad catches a fish, and he has to take the stomachs and things out of the fish to find out what they've been eating." She said, "He's going to have a ball with you with this frog." She said, "I guess we won't have him do the frog." Yeah, but it was school at 66 was easier than school at 18
Yeah.
for me. So, and I think there's a difference between a wanting to and having to. You know, I wanted not many things in life you start, or I have started that I know of, that I haven't finished, and school was one of them. And I had 3 kids that are very educated, so I figured that I had to do something about that, you know. So my wife and I both went back to school at the same time and finished high school. So,
At 66 years old.
yep.
Did you get to wear a cap and gown and
Yep.
walk down and get the diploma and all
Yep.
that?
Yep.
That's pretty fun. So did you have kids and grandkids that attended?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had great grandkids that said,
That's fun.
yeah. Yeah. It was, no, I don't think I'd had great grandkids that attended. 66 years ago, that'd be, yeah, I had great grandkids that attended, yeah.
Yeah.
And my great granddaughter attended it, so, yep.
And then when you graduated from that, did you just stop there? Did you go to college too, or did you just do your degree and diploma?
No, I did a little bit backwards. I took some college classes before I graduated from high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took 5 college classes, and I took drafting, math, 2 classes in hydraulics, and a welding class in high school or in college. So, and the welding class they wouldn't let me take.
No.
No, they said I'd welded too long
Yeah.
to take a welding class. So,
Be too easy for you.
yeah, the instructor said it'd be too hard for him.
And now, when we first started working together, you had told me that you were 91 years old. And one of the questions I asked you, I said, "Do you want to work because you want to or because you have to?" And you said, "Because I want to."
Yeah.
What makes you want to keep working at 91 years old doing electrical and plumbing and building?
Why would anybody want to get up out of bed in the morning, go from a bed to a chair and sit down in a chair all day long and do nothing but watch television, eat, watch television, go back to bed? Why would anybody want to do that?
Yeah.
There's too many things to do than just to sit down. So, and everybody says, "Well, do you do it for the money?" Sure, I get paid for doing what I do, but the money is what we call the fun money. That's the money that we do use for vacations and things like that, and so that's why I do it.
And what are your fun things that you enjoy doing now at this stage of your life?
I still like to fish. I love to fish. I don't fish as much as I'd like to, but I love to fish, and we go on cruises quite a bit, and they're fun times. They're not exactly I'd rather go fishing than I would go on a cruise, but but that's all right too. And my wife and kids like to go on cruises. It's always nice to be with family. So that's some of the fun things.
Awesome. And then I was going to ask you too about where have you worked and what type of professions have you done throughout your life?
I started at 18 years old at Post Cereal. I worked there for a year and 8 months and hated every minute of it. Went to work at Clark's. And at Clark's, you worked there, you got laid off a lot when your first years when you first worked there. And so went to work at Clark's. Went to work at Oliver's Aircraft, which people don't even know was in Battle Creek anymore, but went to work for Oliver's Aircraft. Came back home, was laid off. I worked at gas stations. I worked at cement companies. I worked at Eaton's. I worked at Oliver's Farm Machinery. I worked at all the major manufacturing companies in Battle Creek except for Kellogg's. I never worked at Kellogg's. And I finished my years out. I worked at 31 years at Clark's. So.
And what'd you do at Clark's? What kind of company was that?
Lift trucks.
Lift trucks?
Yeah. And I did about everything there. My goal when I went to work at Clark's was to learn everything I could learn about different machinery of operating them and how they worked and why they worked and things like that. And I worked in welding for 17 years there, and then I went into the assembly part of it and ended up going to a apprenticeship program for maintenance and finished that up. And that's where I ended up as maintenance at Clark's.
Awesome. And then for some time you had your own business?
40 years, 42 years now it's been. Yeah.
And what type of business?
Building.
Building?
Mm-hmm.
And so with building, you started, or you worked with your son at some point, is that correct, or no?
No.
No, just by yourself?
Brother.
With a brother, that's
Brother.
brother.
Older brother. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Short time. Just maybe 5 years. 5 years we worked together. He worked at Clark's, and I retired a year before he did, and then I went to work for myself for a year, and then he came along and wanted me to go with him, and so we went in together, and we spent about 5 years, and then he retired. So I've been by myself ever since.
How old were you when you retired from Clark's?
50.
50?
Mm-hmm. Just turned 50.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me ask you this about being 91. I mean, I'm only 40, so even more than half your age, or you're more than twice my age. Now, I feel like I got to 40 really fast. I feel like time went really fast. Do you feel like at 91 time has went fast or just right, or what do you think about that?
At 40, they'll start speeding up, and at 91, yesterday was spring, and it's fall, and tomorrow will be spring again. They go real fast.
It goes really fast.
Yeah. Yep.
What would be your advice to someone, 20, 30, 40, 50? What's your advice for them and how to live a good life?
First of all, God. You live the way. This gets personal. I feel God's watched over me all my life, forever. People ask me, when did you become Christian? I don't know. I don't know when I became Christian. I know that all my life, from junior high school right on through, all my life I've known God, and I know that He watches over you, and I know He cares for you. So the first way to start living your life is for him. Next, you start living your life for your family. And then you start living your life for the community. That's the way I feel. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, absolutely. That's a good answer. I think a lot of people nowadays live their life for themselves.
Yes.
I feel like that's, do you feel like when you look at the different generations, maybe your generation in comparison to generations after you, maybe a common thread is each generation people start living more and more for themselves, do you think?
I think so, but I think we have to be careful when we get old. Because I think sometimes we live for ourselves too when we get old. We worry about ourselves. And we think that the kids are not up to par. And I think if we look around, we find lots of young kids that are very good kids. So I think if you look harder for the good kids and less for the bad kids, that you'll find there's lots and lots of good kids in this world. And I think even middle-aged people, when you get 90 years old, you can be pretty independent growing up. And it's hard to lose that independence. You find that now young people, you get to a door and they open the door for you. And I find that some old people are rude when it comes to opening that door because they ignore the people or they go in the other door. And I think that we have to be careful as old people to realize that there's a lot of good people around us.
When you work with some young guys with us, we got guys that are 18, 19, 20 years old, and we got some good kids that work with us, and I say it too. I mean, I think younger generations, I hear people all the time, all these young kids, all they do is get on the tablets or their phones and this and that, and they're lazy or they do this or that. And, and that's not true. I mean, it's, I think that we get that in our head and we kind of stereotype a whole generation. I remember when I was young, generation before me didn't have video games. I was one of the first generations of video. All they do is play video games, and and even more so now, but you're right, there's a lot of good kids out there doing good things.
What's better for a 91-year-old person to have a young person who this 91-year-old can work with him and enjoy it?
Yeah.
And not only enjoy it, but can show him some of the things that you've done and have him listen to you. Your life's not a waste.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know if you want names or not. Micah. I love working with Micah.
He's a good boy.
Yes.
So if you, so your message to anybody that's maybe 91 or 41 or 51 is, give grace. I think really grace is a huge key of that. Great, grace for yourself and grace for others.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a big thing that's missing in today's society.
And while you're giving those blessings to people, you're not only giving, but you're getting.
Absolutely. That's good.
Yep.
I had talked about this when my wife was on the podcast, that pastor, when I first started going to church, because I do remember when I first became a Christian, because I wasn't a Christian before, and I just gotten kind of rooted in the first church I got rooted in, and I was really financially not well off, and a pastor came up and he had offered me $20. He said, "It's on my heart to give this to you. I want to bless you this." And I said, "Oh man, I can't accept that." And he said, "I know God's telling me to bless you, and He'll bless me because of it. twofold, fivefold, tenfold,
Right.
100-fold.
Right.
And if you don't accept my blessing, you steal my blessing.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And that was a life-changing, game-changing moment.
Yep.
Humble myself to accept the blessing from someone else.
Yep.
But it's so true. You know, the old saying is better to give than to receive. You know, falls right in line with that, because it's wonderful to bless others, and we have faith that God's going to bless us in return. And it's not just because we want to bless someone just to get our blessing back, because, you know, it doesn't really work that way. But in the long run, it really does. You know, feels good to bless others.
When I went in the Army, well, I went to church regular, Urbandale Methodist Church. I went. And when I went in the Army, the Gideons give you it automatically. They just automatically give you a Bible. You can do whatever you want to with it. I kept my Bible. Terrible reader. I was a terrible reader as a young person. Still am. But I carried that Bible with me all through the service, and I read it, marked it. I had a thing about Bibles. You didn't mark in Bibles. That wasn't supposed to do that, and so. But I marked things that I read in the Bible, you know, while I was in the service. That's why I said I don't know when I became Christian, actually, because I've always believed in God. I've always believed that He's supreme, you know, and so I carried that Bible with me all through the service. I tell the story. When I came home from service, it was always in my toolbox at work, and then I'd read it at my break times. And one day it came up missing. Never have seen it since. And I tell people, well, somebody took my Bible, but it didn't do them any good. And they say, why didn't it do them any good? They didn't bring it back. They'd have brought it back, but that's why I say I don't know when I became Christian. I've always believed in God. I've always had pretty high morals. I've always girls for me has always been on a pedestal. You looked at girls different than you looked at boys, because they were extra special in my mind. You know, still are. Ladies are extra special to me as far as I'm concerned. They don't do things. The other day I said I had a 50-pound bag of mortar to take down the basement, and I told Tiffany, tell Ray I got a 50-pound bag of mortar to take down the basement. And I turned around, and here she came downstairs with a 50-pound bag of mortar, and I sort of, in my own little way, scolded her. "Do you supposed to be doing that?" You know? And I don't think ladies. I think ladies are special. Still do. Always will. I think to be treated special, you have to look. I decided, I think I told you, I decided in my life one time that felt that God wanted me to be single until He sent Sandra. And when He sent Sandra, I knew better. You know, and she was very special. I was looking for a lady when I came home from the service, and I didn't find any. I was looking for Miss Perfect, and there was just no Miss Perfects there until Sandra came along. And then I knew at that point that I found Miss Perfect, you know. So that's why I say that I don't know when I became Christian. It just, I've always felt God's always led my life, you know, so protected me while I was in service overseas, protected me, and took a lot of fears away from me, made me realize I could stand on my own 2 feet and all that kind of thing. So
You talked about, I remember you telling me before that at a point in your life, in your younger ages of life, you didn't have a lot of confidence in yourself.
No.
And where do you think that came from, or tell me a little bit about that?
Older brother.
Yeah.
Older brother was very smart, very good looking. My older brother was very smart. Skipped school a lot because he was ahead. He'd go to school 2 days a week and be a week ahead of time in his classes, you know. So, and that started off my mother was second. She didn't give me a lot of confidence. She let me know that I was not as bright as my brother, and that's a good line, and that kind of thing. And so I just came up that I was not as good as the next person. I came up. I just told Micah yesterday about a young lady. I was trying to encourage him a little bit. I told him about a young lady in high school that her name was Jackie Smith. Prettiest girl I've ever seen in my life, I thought. And never dated her. Just, she's too good for me. She's too good for me. So, and I don't know how, and I never found out how, but when I went into the service, I got a letter about every day from Jackie Smith. All the time I was in the service, I had a lot of letters from her and got care packages from her. Cookies, cakes, all kinds of stuff from her. And somewhere along the way, her and my mother and her mother got together. And I guess all three of them decided that I would marry Jackie Smith when I got home. Well, I got home. I was home probably a few weeks, and I finally called Jackie Smith and asked her if she'd like to go for a motorcycle ride. We went for a motorcycle ride, and I brought her home, and I found that Jackie Smith was not Miss Perfect. and so she just went by the way, and I was trying to encourage Micah with that because of the situation he's in, you know. And so I don't know if it did or not, but he was down pretty much yesterday, so I don't know how it is.
Now, let me ask you this: with being 91, you carry a lot of wisdom, a lot of times that you've been in. No, don't think so.
I fool people.
You fool people. Yeah. I'd say out of all of your life experiences, like things that have happened to you, what are your top 2 or 3 life experiences that you feel are the most valuable that help you today?
First life experience is the most valuable service, being in the service. That's probably one of the most helpful things for me in my life.
Yeah.
Was being in service. That's where you start gaining confidence in yourself. That you find that you have to take care of yourself, and you have to watch what you're doing, and you have to always remember too that at that point you come that I'm Marvin Krontz. I'll be Marvin Krontz all my life. And I have to live a life that when I look back, that's going to carry on with Jim Krontz and Mark Krontz and Kerry Krontz. You have to leave good behind you, not bad, you know. So that's one of the valuable things in my life. I find that Sandra was the next valuable thing that came to my life. She gave me a whole lot of self-confidence because she had a whole lot of confidence in me, you know. And I think that young people ought to look hard when they're looking for a mate, because I don't believe the way that this life is now that you're gonna date a girl and have a girlfriend or have a live-in wife, and if it don't work out, we'll move on, you know. I think marriage is a lifetime thing. I think when you marry, and I think that when you marry, a man has a great responsibility to that lady. And so that's the great thing. Sandra was the next great thing came in my life, and then my kids. Mark, I used to think
Sorry.
Mark, I used to think, and I don't know if you know Mark very well or not, but Mark, I used to think, didn't have too much pride in me. And so he went off to college. And the first week that we went to the college to see him,
Sorry, Mark.
the first week that we went to college to see him, going to rust your insides out, we to get a hold of me, to introduce me to all of his friends. And I found all that time. Now, Mark was 20 years old when we went to college because he waited for Carrie to go to college. And all that time I found that it wasn't Mark at all, it was Dad. That was sort of ashamed of being me, you know. And that was a great time for me.
Now, one thing that we have in common, my wife had leukemia, and your daughter Carrie had leukemia when she was a child.
Yes.
And we've talked about that before. You know, I can't imagine. I said this when Tiffany was sick, that it was difficult enough having a wife be sick, but I think it would be even more difficult for a child to be sick because there's less understanding and less, not able to deal with it as much.
I think it's the opposite way around.
Yeah.
I think that it'd be harder for you to have a wife being sick because Carrie was 12 years old. She was, first of all, she's very dependent on God.
Even at 12 years old?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's going to be all right in her mind. And to have a 12-year-old child who they tell you is going to die in 2 months to 2 years, that's hard. And there's a point that you have to go off in your little corner and in a way sort of scold God and in a way ask for a lot of help at the same time. And you have to, at one point, you have to get off in your little corner and you have to say, God, there ain't nothing I can do about this. This is just, there's nothing I can do. It's all up to you. At one point, when she was in her treatments, they'd come and told me she was going to have radiation. And I said, I'll have to think about that for a bit. And the doctor said, you've got about 3 minutes to think about it. And so I said, do what you have to do. And at that point, I had to go in my little corner again and say, God, if I blundered, you have to make a blessing. He made the blessing for me. You know that. She's 64 years old now. She was 12 years old back then, so you know that she made a blessing. Of course, you know that she went through another process of that now, so and another blessing, so.
So 50, that's been 52 years ago.
Yep.
My wife was the same. She was determined. That she was on the podcast, and I talked about I was the one crying all the time, and she'd be like, "You're crying again? Stop crying all the time." And for me, it was, I thought about my daughters growing up without their mother is what really hurt me. But we refused to, give heed to that. But it's out of your hands. And I say this too. I mean, I was frustrated with God. Why my family? Why my beautiful wife? And I think I've said this before. I feel like it's okay to get sometimes angry with God and tell God exactly how you feel. They say God holds the whole world in the palm of His hand. It means He must have some pretty broad shoulders. I think He can take it. You know. So, I think that we don't have to tippy-toe around God sometimes. It's okay to tell Him exactly how He feels because He already knows.
Right. Right.
So we have that in common. And your daughter now is a school teacher for my daughter. And one thing that I thought was funny, that's actually how we met. Story was I walked into school. We had started, I started getting in the real estate business, had just gotten my first apartments and was fixing them up, and not quite sure where she heard about that from, but she said she is the authority at the school when you walk in, And she said, "Hey, I need to talk to you. I heard what you've been doing." And I thought, because right outside of her classroom, I always walk my girls in, and I back up in a parking spot that's not actually a parking spot. And I thought I was going to get in trouble for my bad parking. And so then I said, I said, okay. I went up and talked to her, and she said, "Hey, I heard you've been fixing up houses." She said, "My dad does plumbing and drywall and electrical, and so he's always looking for projects to do." And she said, "He's over at Continental Bakery right now if you want to talk to him." And I said, "Well," I got, my little one at daycare. And I said, I can't right now. I said, "Does he have a phone?" "Oh yeah, but he doesn't use it." And I was thinking, honestly, at the time, just to be completely honest, I knew she was, in her 60s. So I thought, man, her dad must be pretty getting up there. And then we met, and then and we talked, and and the funny thing too is, when my daughter, she first went to middle school, she was kind of afraid of your daughter. She thought, man, she's kind of strict, Dad. I don't know. And she just told me the other day, she goes, "Oh, Dad, she's the nicest teacher. I love having her." So she does a great job of, having that authority, making sure the kids don't give her crap, or at least not as much.
Yeah.
But then giving them love too, and they enjoy having her.
She is a strict teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a very strict teacher.
I think we need more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too.
She's been a teacher for how long now?
Well, since I have to think about this. Oh, 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah.
In her 20s, probably.
Well, right out of college, right out of high school. She went to high school for 4 years. What that make her 19 when she got out of high school, and I've been a teacher ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm out of college, excuse me. Yeah.
23, 24 years old.
Yep.
So, yeah, and so 40 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
She's seen a lot too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What would be, we'll say a young generation, like Michael's generation, kids that are coming up now, dealing with things in life? What would be your advice to them to, I think nowadays there's depression, anxiety. I had someone in my family who committed suicide recently. Do you think, I guess in your day, which is still your day, but do you feel like those things were as prevalent as they are now?
Yep.
They were?
Yep. A lot different back then, though.
Yeah.
We didn't have. Now, if somebody goes through suicide, a death in their family, they have counselors for the kids. We didn't have that back when we was young. I think now that even if you have a dog die, kids have to see counselors and that. We didn't have that back in that day. We didn't have the doctors like we have today. We just, but we had in our day, it wasn't the dope or the whatever, it was alcohol for young kids. Kids was always trying to figure out how to get drunk and that kind of thing. Now it's dope, and I would imagine that. I think alcohol, tobacco, and all them kind of things are bad habits that are terrible to get rid of after you get into them. Yeah. Never got into them, so I can't really say that for sure, but I think they are. And I think that we had it back then too, but in a different stage in life, because it's got worse maybe. But I don't know it's got worse because the population's got to be so much greater than it was back in those days, and so I think we had the same thing, and I don't know what your question was, but
say what's your advice for a young person that's going through depression or thinking about suicide, where now you've lived a long life, and what would be your advice to them?
Can't answer that because I never thought about it.
Yeah.
Suicide never entered my mind. Depression, I don't know I've ever really been depressed a whole lot. I had two little brothers that passed away when I was a young kid. And back in those days, older brothers was responsible. The younger brothers were their responsibility. We had to take care of our younger brothers or sisters or whatever. In my case, it was brothers, you know. And so when we lost the first younger brother, who was about 3 years old when he passed away, that was a terrible shock to my older brother and I, because we'd taken care of our younger brother. And then the next brother was only 5 months old, so we didn't really get to know him a whole bunch, but we still had to we learned how to change diapers, and back in those days we changed diapers and used the same diapers over and over, you know. But we learned all those things back then. So I can't tell you, I couldn't give you advice to people who has been through suicide, because I've never experienced that. You know, I've had a couple cousins who tried to commit suicide, but both of them lived through it. So suicide is not an option for me. It just first of all, it goes against what I believe. You know, so.
I tell people, you know, it's just if you can weather the storm,
Yep.
you know, because there's going to be storms in life. You know, it gets better, you know, and just, you know, like the cancer, you know, that was such a hard time in our family's life, your family's life. But, you know, you get through those things, and life's so short anyways.
Yep.
You know, like you said, at 91, it's here and it's gone. It's like a vapor.
Yep.
And so, you know, you might as well stay on the ship and, you know, and finish it out. So, so tell me, what are some of your greatest memories that you have, maybe with family or vacations, or a couple, 2-3 favorite memories that you have?
Well, I remember my first airplane ride. That was quite an experience.
When was that?
That was in Benton Harbor, and it was in a biplane, 2 wings, and open cockpit, all that. And I don't know what the speed was of the airplane, probably 65, 70 mile an hour was the top speed of it. And we flew over Lake Michigan and back to the airport. But that was a good experience. I've had so many good. It's a lot easier to take good experiences for granted. And I've had so many good experiences. Do I want to go back and live them? No. I've lived them once, and they've been good, you know. My experience in the service was good. Like I told you, I did a lot of growing up. I did a lot of self-learning about myself. I just did a whole lot of good things in the service. Scary times, yes, there was scary times in the service, but that too, I feel that God took care of me, you know, and I feel that He took care of me back at that time, because I knew you prayed about those things, you know, and He took care of me through those times, and I also believe that in the situations that we went through, it tells us in the Bible that God will put nothing on our shoulders that we can't handle. So if we trust and do what we're supposed to be doing, He's not going to overload us. I've never known great pain in my life. Everybody says everything you've had broken and everything you've done, how could you not have known pain? But I've never known great pain in my life. And I feel, and doctors tell me that I'm in a dangerous situation because I don't feel pain like a lot of people feel pain. And they say that you could have a heart attack and not know you're having a heart attack in that situation. But so I feel that's been taken care of in my life, you know, that part's my life. So I just think that we have to just one day at a time. Yeah.
And you're still part of a church, still go to church regularly, still
Oh yeah.
serving the church.
Oh yeah.
What's your take on the different religions and different denominations? What do you think on that aspect of things?
I'm not much on denominations. I think we're all one denomination. And I think that if you're a Methodist, that's fine. And if you're a Baptist, that's fine. If you're a Church of God, that's fine. Don't try and be changing those people. Live your life, and your life that God wants you to live, you know. Try and live your life every day that you've done something that you've made God feel that He's pleased with you. But I don't, like I say, denominations don't mean too much to me. I think let a person live what they want to live, you know, in that situation. So,
They're all Christian.
yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One church.
Yep.
If you had a message for your loved ones, or like one message that you want to tell people in general or your loved ones, what would it be? What would be the message you want to give them?
To look for all the positive things in life that you can see. Find. When you get near negative, get away from it and find the positive. That'd be mine.
That's good. It's easy to find the negative in things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everything is like, everything's a choice. I say that a lot, and I try to teach that to my kids, that everything's a choice. You choose to be happy, you choose to be sad.
Yes.
You know, you can have feelings and emotions, but you can
Right.
choose to listen to them or not.
You can be sad, but you can have joy.
Yeah.
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 Yep. I think that I think that's a fact. I think that you can be sad and have joy, but I think that and you look at life. I think at 90 years old, you look at life a lot different than 40 years old does. You know, I've had a good life. How could I ask for more? What do I not have that I want? You know, there's not many things that I want in life. And the things that I don't have don't really matter that much to me. I've just had a good life. And when you've had a good life, it's hard to tell somebody that's had a bad life, you know, how good life is actually is. And like when somebody's going through death in their family, I don't think I've ever said to a person, I know how you feel, because I don't know how they feel. You know, I've never lost a wife, never lost a child. So I can't walk up to somebody and say, I know exactly how you feel, because I don't.
Yeah.
I have no idea how. I think I might know, and I know if I would lose Sandra, what it would mean to me. So, or one of my children, you know, what it mean to me. And so, even though my children are not kids anymore, I guess maybe there's not too many kids that live to be almost 70 years old and still have their father living with them, you know. So, and there's not many fathers who have 70-year-old kids. You know, that still, so.
Now, is there anything in your life that if you could go back, you'd change it?
Nope.
Not one single thing.
Nope.
Nope.
The hard times make it. The hard times make it so you realize how good the good times are. And we have to go through hard times to find out about the good times. And I think that I've had my share of hard times, and I think I've had a lot more good times. So,
Yeah. And like what I was saying with that too is, you know, I think that, and when you're talking about living a good life, I mean, it's easy. Anytime you make a choice, the next time you make that choice, it becomes easier. And then the next time easier, that's where habits are formed.
Yep.
You know, when you decide, yes, I'm going to go ahead and smoke a cigarette, the second cigarette's easier to make that decision than the first cigarette.
you say so.
And then the next, if I say, I don't smoke myself,
Yeah.
but it's like that with working out. You know, I worked out. I remember the first time I was nervous. I didn't want to go work out. I didn't want to look silly or whatever it was. And I went. Yeah, I should say probably the second time was harder because I was so sore I couldn't lift my arms. But I chose to go the second time, then the third time, and then it became an easier and easier choice. Yep. And now it's a way of life.
Yep.
You know, it's. I wake up in the morning. It's not even something. I mean, there's some days I want to stay in bed, but it's part of my routine. That's what I do.
Yep.
I believe that happiness is the same thing. You choose joy every day. We can choose negativity. We can choose to be grumpy. We can choose to be unkind, or we can choose joy. We can choose happiness. We can choose giving. We can choose caring. It's a choice that we make every day.
You get up in the morning, look out that window, and you can say, "Oh man, Lord, what a beautiful day it is out there today." And it could be storming hard, but you can say, "Oh man, what a beautiful day it is out there today. I wonder what's going to really happen. It's going to be good today." And so you go through the rest of the day looking for that good thing. Or you can get up in the morning and you look out that window and sun can be shining like it is now, and you can say, "Man, what a rotten day. I don't want to do nothing today. Why'd I even have to get up?" And you go through the day looking for everything bad that's going to happen through the day. Bad things are going to happen today to everybody, but you don't have to look for them. You look for the good things, and the bad things are not half as bad as you think they are. So that's the way I feel.
That's good. Well, awesome, Marv. Well, anything else that you want to talk about while we're here?
Nope.
No. What's the future look like for Mr. Marv at 91?
See what the day's going to bring. Just go to 90, 91 another day.
Yep.
Yep.
How long do you think you'll live?
Until I die.
Till you die.
Yep.
When's that going to happen?
When God wants it to happen.
When I stop breathing. Anything left in life that you have on your agenda that you want to accomplish before God calls you home?
Not that I know of.
No.
Not that I know of. No. I'm well pleased. God don't owe me nothing.
When someone talks about Mr. Marv Krontz behind your back, what is it that you hope that they say?
Well, I'd hope they could say good things, That's sort of funny you said that, because Sandra just said to me this morning, a lady was saying something about somebody saying something when she was gone, and Sandra was saying to me, "I wonder what people say about us when we're not around, I'd hope it's good things, that they say." And I do find that in my life, I find that I'm getting a lot of things that I don't deserve. People has said good things about me that I don't really deserve, and that's good. But I just don't. I don't think that we have to look for that. I think that what we put behind us, we can't take away, and what we put before us, we have to watch what we're doing for tomorrow. So.
Yeah. And it's funny, because you still get around pretty good, still down on your hands and knees doing work, get around, still do a lot of things. And it was funny because you'd ask me, "Do you know this fellow's name?" Because he saw you working and was telling someone else from the church, "Oh, this old guy, 91, named Marv, and he's still doing, work." And she goes, "I think I know that guy." And it ended up being you, and the story got back around to you. And so you plan on working as long as you can, right? There's no retirement day for you?
No. Whenever there are things that I won't do, like I told you the other day that I'm through tiling. I don't particularly. I like the mechanical part. I still like the mechanical part. I think that, in fact, I think you got some mechanical things that I'm going to have to do one of these days soon. But that I like to do. And my favorite jobs used to be roofing and siding. Well, I don't roof anymore. I probably could do a little bit of siding, but I haven't done any siding lately. But I promised my wife I won't get up on roofs anymore, so I don't get on roofs. No, I've accomplished a whole lot of things. Like I said, I think that most everything I've ever started, I've finished. And that's one of my goals in life is to finish what you start. Your basement. I've got a spot down there in your wall that's bothering me right now, and when you go to bed at night, you're thinking about something that went wrong, and you wake up in the morning, you're still thinking about what's went wrong. That's not good. So
You do that when we've run into problems. You'll say, "I thought about it all night, and I figured out what it was." You know?
I ran into a problem yesterday, and I haven't got it figured. I put a tile up, and the wall's not quite as flat as it should be, and I got to figure out. Might have to take a tile out and do something to the wall to flatten it out, But
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
So and you still having fun? Are you still having fun living life?
Oh yeah, sure.
And you still go up north in Michigan, and go up there to your cottage. Still enjoy that.
Oh yeah. You're just telling him to Monday or Saturday we're going up, close down the cottage. So
Is that sad at that point of the year? Or are you
No.
ready for it to happen?
no, it's just time it happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And like tomorrow it'll be spring again.
Yep. And it does. It comes faster than you really believe it does.
Yeah.
You figure. I don't plan a whole lot of things way ahead. Sandra and Carrie do. We've had a cruise planned for 2 years. Next month the cruise is here. You see, and it seems like yesterday that they started planning that, but they planned it. They planned it long enough ago. It's all paid for. It's all paid for, taken care of. So that's how far they plan ahead. I don't plan that far ahead. Tomorrow will take care of itself. So, yeah.
That's good. Well, Mr. Marvin, I appreciate you taking the time so much, talking with me, and joining me on this podcast, and for being a good sport. So I appreciate everything and appreciate all that you do.
Well, I appreciate you more than you know. Yeah. I've enjoyed working with you and the kids. I call them the kids. I know they don't like to be called the kids. I was thinking about Stephen and Carrie. You were saying your daughter likes Carrie.
Yeah.
Stephen didn't care too much for Carrie. She was too strict for him.
Yeah.
So, but Carrie, see, that's what I think that's what kids have to. I think that's what we have to do as people. We have to do things like talking about Carrie. 99% of the people that has ever dealt with Carrie in school will tell you she was a super teacher. And even the students, some of them. And it's really fascinating because some of the students that are now fathers and mothers still call her Miss Krontz.
Yeah.
It's not Carrie, it's Miss Krontz,
Yeah.
And Stephen said to me not too long ago, "You don't want people to wear hats in church, do you?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I don't like people wearing hats in church." And he says, "You don't like people wear hats inside?" And I said, "No, I don't like people wearing hats inside." I said, "Why'd you ask me that?" And he says, "Because I knew it." I said, "How'd you know it?" And he said, "Because Carrie gets after you all the time about having a
Oh,
hat
that's
on
funny.
inside." But I think that's what we have to leave behind us, is that kind of a life that we have to leave behind us, and that's what I think I would shoot for is to have good memories. The other day, fan belt broke in the car. I stopped at the bus garage, Battle Creek bus garage. That's where I stopped the car. And the guy came out and he says, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Broke a belt." And he says, "Oh, let's look and see if we can't see it." So he looks under the, "Oh," he said, he's got to have a new belt. I said, "Yep." I said, "I got a record coming." And he says, "Oh," he says, "You look familiar." And I said, "I'm Marvin." "Oh," I said, "I know who you are." And then I realized that this was one of the friends I've known for several years' son. And so I stopped back the next day after I got the car, and I stopped back and went into the bus garage, and I thanked him for coming out and trying to help me. And he says, "Oh," he said, "I was talking to my uncle," he said, "yesterday about you." And I said, "Oh," and he said, "Yeah," he says, "Man," he says, "my uncle sure thinks you're a great guy." And I said, what? And my uncle thinks you're a great guy. And I said, why does he think I'm a great guy? And he says, oh, he said, hey, man, he said, he told me, he said, he used to weld at Clark's. And he said, man, he said, if you wanted to see a beautiful bead of weld, he said, you wanted to see that man put down a bead of weld. He said, he could put down a bead of weld that you didn't want to touch. He said, it was so pretty. And that's the kind of thing I think that people ought to leave behind them, that kind of a life. That not, and this fellow who told him that, he was always playing pranks on me because he was always trying to get the best of me, and I'd always get the best of him. And so it was unusual to somebody like that would tell a story, to their nephew. And so, and I think that's the kind of life we want to leave behind us.
Well, and when we first met too, I remember you telling me this, that initially when probably Carrie had told you about working with me, you said you didn't want to work with me because you said I don't want to work with a slumlord.
Yep.
And then we met and you came and worked with me, and then later on you said, yeah, you're not that bad to work with.
No,
so.
I did. It wasn't later on. It was that day.
That day.
Yes, I went home and I told Carrie. I said, Carrie, he's all right. I said, that's all right. He's not a slumlord. I said, he's fixing up houses and doing a nice job at fixing up houses. And so, and that's good that you have people say that about you.
That's what I try to do. And we have a fun team. I mean, we got a good team. It started with it just started with you and myself and Stevie and Micah, and Brad.
Trent.
And Trent, yeah.
Trent,
Yeah. And so, and then Trent, he's graduated college and moved on and got a grown-up job now. And then we've expanded now to a bigger team now, and more houses and more properties, and then that's kind of what spurred this. Was I wanted to talk about real estate and housing market economics, but also life and God, and and having a good life, a little bit of everything. It started with real estate, and now it's kind of everything.
Well, I don't know. For you, I don't know what that started real estate. I think God started you.
Yeah.
I think he got a foot in there.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I didn't know which way to go. I actually was going to be a teacher at Calhoun Christian, and I was trying to find the next thing after my wife's illness, and I always tell the story that I got asked to sub for a week, and I really thought I wanted to work at the school and really, be my full-time job, go to school with my kids, and then I subbed for a week and realized that's not the job for me. I felt like I was in jail. So I love being with the kids and hanging out with the kids, but what we do, we have kids that work with us and able to teach them, you teach them some of the trades, teach Micah how to do drywall and tiling and, plumbing and things like that. And then for me, I'm hoping to instill in them, financial knowledge and how to invest and how to, set yourself up and what a mortgage is and some of these things that, I say, man, if I would have known then what I know now, I would have done things a lot differently, and life may have been easier for me. Maybe not, but hopefully for them, I can help them have easier lives.
Think about this, Ray. If you went through a whole life Christian, never known anything else, went to church all your life, gave your life to God when you were 15, live your life as a Christian, or you went through life till you're 20 years old, wild, knew alcohol, cigarettes, dope, the whole works. And at, say, 20 years old, give your life to God. Which is most valuable in life? To go the 20 years wild, or to spend your whole life with God and not know anything else? Have you ever thought about that?
I mean, as long as you found God at some point.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most valuable, is finding God.
Yes, but you also know what the world's like
Yeah.
before you found God.
True.
And you know where you're at now.
Yeah.
If you've had God all your life, you don't know what the world is out there,
True.
so to speak.
You have a different appreciation.
So you learn that how much more you appreciate God than you did if you had been a Christian all your life.
Yeah.
I've always looked at that. And I had a man one time tell me that he'd been a Christian all of his life, knew nothing else. And I asked him, you think you ever been cheated out of anything? No. And I said, do you think you can tell a man, well, you hadn't ought to do this when you don't know because you never did it, you know? You can tell a man, I can tell a man, it's no problem to quit smoking. Man, it's no problem to quit drinking because I never did it, you know?
Yeah.
Why would it be a problem to me? See, but if I find a man who has been a heavy drinker or a heavy smoker and give it up, they know what it was all about. You see, and so I just wonder sometimes if sometimes we as Christians don't take things for granted.
Yeah.
To sit in the back seat of a church and look the church over during the service, you can say, well, there's old brother so-and-so up there. He does this and he does that, and he says he's so much more of a Christian than me, and on and on and on. The old sister so-and-so over there, she's a gossip. She does this and that. And I did that in church for a while. And one day I was in church, and I was sitting and I was thinking, and all of a sudden it came to me, Lord, what am I doing? I'm criticizing all these people ahead of me. If you move up, you can't criticize those people ahead of you because they'll be behind you. So I got up the next Sunday and I went to the front row of the church and I sat. And I sat there for a long time, years, maybe 3-4 years. And I sat up there and I thought, I wonder how many people back of me criticize me for the things I do. I claim to be a Christian and I do this or I do that. And this comes into the denomination thing now. Different beliefs. Some people say you can't dance. You can't go to movies. You can't do this. Still to this day, there's churches that say that. And I say, well, you can't do this or you can't do that. You can't drink a beer or you can't and be a Christian. Who am I to have the right to say that to a person when they can say, well, he does this or he does that, you know, because we all see each other in a different light. And so I think that's what I believe about Christianity. I believe that let you be the Christian that you are, whether you're a Baptist or a Methodist or a Church of God or what you are. Let you be the Christian you are, because God has showed you that's the way you should be. He showed me the way I should be, and that's what I should be. Not you don't have to be like me to be my brother or sister, you know. So,
That's good.
Dr. John just died, you know. Mm-hmm. Black man. Went to a Promise Keeper, met him there. And at one point they said, turn and give a man a hug around you that you don't know. I turned and right there he was, and I gave him a hug. A few years after I gave him that hug, he said, Marv, he said, I got something to tell you. And I said, what's that? And he says, you are the first and only white man that has ever hugged me. That's the kind of brother and sister we should be. It don't matter where we go to church or what we do. We and our church basically believes if you come into our church and you say, I'm Christian, we accept that and you become a member of the church. No nothing's to sign or anything. We just automatically become a member of the church when you claim you're a Christian, you know. So, and I think that's the way we ought to be.
Yeah.
Accept a person as they are and let them be that way.
I agree. Too much division nowadays.
Yep.
A lot of division out there.
Yep.
So when I remember this, I always tell this story about my grandfather. He was a politician. He was a township supervisor, and I think that was about. He realized how much responsibility was with that he didn't want to go much further than that. And But I remember one time, I just heard it in school. I couldn't even tell you which president it was, but, someone saying this and this and this about this president. And I remember coming home and in front of him, I said, oh, that president doesn't know anything. He's so stupid. And my grandpa was a very soft-spoken, never raised his voice, very even-keeled guy. And he yelled at me and he said, you watch your mouth. That's a job that you can't handle and you wouldn't want.
That's right.
And so he said, and he told me to respect my commander-in-chief. And that was an eye-opening moment for me because, again, I hadn't really thought of it, but nowadays it's much more divided than it was before, even when I was younger.
Yeah.
So I'm sure even for you, you probably see that division even more than before.
Oh, yeah.
But you may have seen it in different ways too. Maybe it was more divided back in the day and compared to what it is now.
The politician part?
Politicians and just people in general.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Because it goes back to what you said a long time back in this. You said people look out for themselves more than they do their neighbor. And back in time, people looked out for their neighbor as much as they did themselves. What's your neighbor's name over there?
Matt.
What's your neighbor's name over there?
I'll tell you in just a second.
Don't matter. You have to think about it.
Yeah.
Back years ago, you didn't have to think about it.
Yeah.
You not only didn't have to think about it, you could have told them what they had in the front room on the.
Sue. Her name's Sue.
You told them front room what they have on the walls, or you could told them different things about them.
Yeah.
Now you don't know your neighbor that way anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the changes that I don't think has been a good change. I think that neighbors ought to be more neighborly.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Well,
I think you ran out of gas.
I think we ran out of gas. No, we're good. Well, I don't have much else for you, Marv. I think I asked you everything I was going to ask you. I think.
You took up almost all the morning.
And that was my plan. That was my plan. Give Micah some rest.
I think that, is he coming today?
He is.
Oh, okay. What time's he coming?
He's probably already here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate it very much. I appreciate everything that you do. I enjoy, it's been a blessing to get to know you and have you part of my life. We joke with you all the time and we say you have to live to be 100 because we need you too bad. You can't go anywhere anytime soon. So you're going to have to make it to 100.
I'll live until I die.
Yep.
And it might be on your basement floor.
I hope not. My wife would be pretty mad at me at that point.
Well, she shouldn't be because I'd be doing what I like to do.
Yeah.
So.
I had a guy that told me before, he said, you don't have to do anything you don't want to except for die. And you don't have to do that until you stop breathing.
There you go. There you go.
And so I've always enjoyed that. But well, that's Mr. Marv, everybody. Appreciate you very much. And maybe we'll have you on again sometime and talk about more things that we didn't cover today. Because I know as soon as we're done, I'll think, oh man, I should ask Mr. Marv about this. So
I think you asked me enough.
All right. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in with Real with Ray, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Real with Ray podcast. Please like and subscribe, share it with a friend, and give us your feedback. What did you think of the podcast? If you've got any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out and make sure you tune in to the next episode. Let's go.